You're listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online, and my name, it's Andrew Mackay-Smith. I hope you're doing well. The interview subject that I have prepared for you today is Dennis Lyxzén. Now, Dennis, if you're listening, my sincere apologies if I've mispronounced your surname there. Dennis, if you don't know, is the singer in Refused, International Noise Conspiracy, and a bunch of other bands. Just check out his resume online. It's extraordinarily impressive. The reason for the chat, though, is to talk about Refused brand new album for 2019. It's called War Music. It's simply outstanding. One of the albums of the year. Gosh, I've said that a few times, but this year has been a bloody good year for rock music and punk, hardcore, whatever you want to call it. You know, noisy rock and roll. Let's just call it that. And this album is going to be a vanguard of those releases this year. It's out 18th of October 2019 via Spinefarm. So let's have a listen to what Dennis has to say. Here we go. Here he is, Dennis. It's Andy Mackay-Smith calling for our chat. How you going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Good. How's the, I call it the Aussie phoner grind. How's the interviews with the Australian journotypes been going?
It's been very good so far. I'm quite excited to talk to Aussie people. I like them a lot.
Mate, I think you probably are aware of this, but Refused are a very popular band in Australia.
Yeah.
You know.
We've been. I mean, even my other band's International Noise Conspiracy, Australia always gives a lot of love. So I've had almost only exceptional experiences with being in Australia playing. So yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to the guys in Opeth. I've had a bunch of conversations. You know, Speed from Soilworks, so many Swedish musicians, and there's a real kinship between Swedish musicians and Australian audiences. I don't know what it is, mate, but we just get what you guys do, and it's pretty much universal, I've got to say, and I'm really grateful for it. And I actually find, as an interviewer, I've done almost 500 interviews at this point, I really enjoy talking to people from Sweden. I don't know what it is, mate. It's like we're a very southern colony of Sweden or something like that. We seem to have a very similar sense of humour, even though we shouldn't have anything in common with each other because our countries are so far apart. But it's just something I know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, even where I live, because I live far up north of Sweden. I mean, it's Australia's literally on the opposite side of the world. I mean, it's as far as you can pretty much go on an airplane. And but yeah, there's a weird kinship. And I mean, but I think there's something about the culture of Australia. Maybe it's a bit more enlightened than a lot of other. I mean, especially compared to America or something like that. So I think there's something about that clicks. You know,
it does.
One of my best friends. Yeah, one of my best friends in Australia, and we get along amazingly. And we just one of those deals where just like we met and we're like, oh, we're just going to be best friends from now. And yep, that makes sense. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear, mate. So let's talk about this album. What can I say about it except that it's fantastic. It truly is. Look, I got the stream from John, and I've been listening to it a fair bit. It's likely to say, and I haven't listened to it enough to really make comparisons to your previous music. But what I will say is this: it stands up against your previous music, and as you know how influential you've been. It's no boast to say that. Okay, you're as influential as Rage Against the Machine or Nirvana. You truly are. You know what I mean? You're up there with Gang of Four in terms of the most copied band around that doesn't get credit. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
So War Music does continue in that tradition musically. So I didn't check out any of the lyrics, but I just went online quickly before the phone call, and Loudwire said it's politically charged. Now, these days that can mean almost anything, especially with Trump in the office in the US and all the rest of it. But what are your thoughts, mate, on the album, the lyrical content? I suppose because you're writing the lyrics, is it politically charged? Is that the angle that have they got it right when they say that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very. I think it's probably the record that I mean, when you write a record, the sort of tonality of the music will definitely affect the way you write your lyrics or how you phrase stuff, basically. And with just like the riffs that were coming out and the world that we live in, you look around and you see, you know, everything that goes on from Trump to Brexit to the climate to the rise of, you know, the alt-right and fascism. We felt that we had to make the lyrics and the ideas surrounding the record equally abrasive and violent almost. So the whole record is very much our take on late day capitalism, and what that means, both personally and for the world, and So it's a super political record. And I also would say it's probably we have a tendency when we write lyrics, especially me and David, that we want to be a bit clever in a way that maybe not, like in our own minds, we think we're super clever. Most people don't really care. But I think this record is definitely, I think the record that's the least clever of all the records. I mean, it still has a lot of like that weird backhanded like black humor that we have, but it's a very direct lyrically. It's as direct as the music, and there's a lot of times when we're writing something kind of smart, and I'm like, no, it's too smart. And one of the things we talked a lot about writing is you write something, and then we look at each other and we say, why would you want to scream that? And we're like, yeah,
Definitely.
That's right. You don't want to scream that. Yeah. So the record in that sense, yeah, it's super political. It's very much every song basically deals with the ramifications of a capitalist reality, whatever that may be. So yeah, it's a very, very political record. I think the language of it goes hand in hand with the music.
Mm-hmm. Okay, actually, I'll bring up this now. So Greta Thunberg, obviously, sorry, I hope I pronounced her surname correctly there, but I know a family are fairly politically active over there in Sweden. Have you crossed paths with those guys before?
No, I haven't. But I mean, I've known about her mom for a long time because she's like an outspoken, Twitter activist type of person, So I've known about her family. And I mean, I've known about the climate strike since day one because a friend of mine walked by and posted a photo, and he's like, oh, look at this, it's pretty cool, So it's something, I mean, obviously she's from Sweden, so we've been following this closely, and it's definitely amazing. I would have to say it's amazing. I mean, it's one of those things where the power of one can actually transform and really, I mean, we'll see how much we can actually change with this, but I mean, really start up a movement, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So it's quite exciting.
Yep. No, I get you. Yeah, no, we've had a few protests today here in Brisbane. Actually, I think it's only going to keep on ramping up. I think so too. Just individuals. There's just one person today erected a bloody bamboo tripod and then sat on top of it. And the interesting thing is,
sounds very. Well, it sounds like an Australian type of protest.
Well, the interesting thing that I noticed, how the cliche is that a lot of these people are vagrants and they're hippies and they're on the fringes of society. I don't want to misquote you, but I think this woman was a midwife. Certainly it was reported that way in the media, that this woman was a bloody midwife, okay, and she's doing it. So everyday people are starting to become activists, and they're doing things like parking themselves in the middle of busy streets in the middle of Brisbane City.
That's amazing. But I think that's what it's needed. I think one of the things that the left in general has huge problems with, that it's kind of a lifestyle political idea, and it becomes this thing where people like, to be a leftist or to have these ideas, you have to be a certain way or look a certain way. But I mean, in my mind, a lot of these ideas that we are talking about is something that would benefit everyone, like just ordinary people. You don't have to be subculturally affiliated. So I think it's a great thing. And I think that to have these climate protests will start up a bigger conversation about why this is happening and what we can do to change it. Because I think a lot of people, when they talk about these things, they look at the politicians and say, oh, politicians are not doing enough. But I mean, in reality, most of the times politicians, first of all, their hands are tied. And second of all, a lot of them have their pockets in the same industry that are creating these problems. So I think that a movement like this will actually maybe shine a light on the fact that we have an economical, social, culture system that's unattained. We can't really keep doing this. And I think that's something that will happen. So I think it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, you've raised some really good points in there, that a lot of these ideas that are ascribed to say left-wing views, they're actually not really left-wing views, they're common sense views. And I think people in the centre have got to take ownership of that, and I think that's what we're seeing now. Like, this woman's a midwife, she probably could be elsewhere, but instead she's decided to stage this one-person protest. And look, I'm sure Greta, I know she said she would rather be at school too. I mean, this is the thing that's happening these days, and I think it's being. I think what I'm sensing is a general frustration with the existing processes to enact change. So people are trying to get around them because they don't feel their voices are getting heard. And and I think that's where it links in with your music, and I think that's why your music inspires so many people in that way. You've got that. It's an intelligent aggression that you guys have got, like at the drive-in. You know what I'm saying? It's that similar intelligent aggression.
Totally. Yeah. So, and I think that's a beautiful way of phrasing, because that's kind of what we're going for. I mean, I think that with the music that we have, it's quite violent and it's quite very extrovert in a way. But we're smart people. I mean, a lot of these ideas, yes, they are. Sometimes it becomes sloganry because that's the way kind of pop music is constructed. But we put a lot of thought into this, both musically and lyrically. And we're not, there was a time when we were young punks, and the screaming was very primitive, like in the sense that we're like, a lot of, when you're a young person, it's gut feeling, but we're not those people anymore. I mean, we think about this a lot, and we talk about these issues a lot, and we try to put a lot of depth into these songs, even though you have like 16 lines to get a point across, so yeah.
Look, and that's the other thing too. 16 line to get a point across. You've done it across 4 or 5 albums. Now it's 4 albums, isn't it? Or the 5th album is War Music, I think. Am I right in saying that? Yeah. But in reality, you've had 2 chapters to the band's history. So just looking at recorded output, there was 1994 to 1998. I know you were a band a long time before that, but that's just what we can find in your discography. And then, of course, you picked things up and you released an album in 2015, and here you are again. So, with everything else going on, you're a smart fella. No doubt you could be in industry doing something like that. So why bother being a musician for someone like yourself?
Because when I started playing music, it was the perfect outlet for someone like me. I mean, I was a very alienated kid. I felt like, complete outsider. And music came along, and it gave me a voice. It gave me like a language, and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with this whole idea of what you can accomplish with music, and it also gave my restless energy extremely amazing output. And then, so you start doing music, and you start creating music and writing songs, and then that opens up your world to arts, poetry, everything. Like everything I learned about politics was me getting into music. I wasn't political before I got into music. I never, like politics came to me through, the Dead Kennedys or the Clash or, and you end up here. And one of the things, because I thought a lot about it, a lot of people like, oh, you're a clever guy, you're well-spoken, maybe you should become a politician. But that's exactly my point, is that when you're an artist and when you're a musician, you can exaggerate. You can push it. You can push the envelope. You can be like, you can turn the volume up to 11. And I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about art, is that it gives you an opportunity to really dream, and to really be, have a different agenda, because when you're a journalist or a politician or academia, you have to be rooted somewhat in reality. I mean, which we are as well, but I mean, we always said that the example for us is like, without Malcolm X, no one would have listened to Martin Luther King, if that makes sense.
It does.
And and we don't mind being Malcolm X.
I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of our agenda, an approach. And then there are plenty cool people out there that can do other things and, hopefully implement change on another level. But I mean, we don't mind being that kind of like radical, off the cuff kind of leftist people, and then, if we show people like a different kind of thought is possible, different kind of ideas are possible, then hopefully that will generate something back, and that's so. I love being an artist because it gives me a bit more freedom.
Yeah, really, really well put. Yeah, very articulate. Yeah, I mean, I love that analogy there about without Malcolm X, Martin Luther King couldn't have done his thing, because you do need those trailblazers who beat down the path. There is no path, so they're the ones that beat it down, and then it allows a softer voice to follow, a softer and a more relatable voice to follow. Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because it's one of those things where if you come and you talk to us, we're quite reasonable people, but in the art, you have to sort of amp it up, because in a world that's so filled with static and as you said earlier, like what political charge, what does it mean? It could mean anything. Like you have to amp up your voice, and you have to be like, okay, if we're going to cut through, we have to get right down to it, And I think that's important. And I think for us, that's like a strength that we discovered with punk rock, the discovery of hardcore music, that sort of like amplified insanity, and then people can, if they really want to know what we're thinking, or if they think we're wrong, or if they think we're, off base, then come up and talk to us, and then we'll have a conversation about it. Because I think also for us, also a lot of the thing is like, if we say stuff and someone comes to our Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and then they start saying like, oh, I don't believe it, I think that's, bullshit or whatever, then we have a conversation about this. And that's also a beautiful thing about art, that it starts conversations. And I think that's also, I'd rather have someone be like pissed off at us, or, like, oh, what the hell are they talking about, than just kind of shrugging their shoulders and be like, yeah, it's fine. So I think also, you with the amplified language, you can start conversations. And I think that's a beautiful thing too.
Dennis, these things are over way too bloody quick. I hope you guys tour so we get another opportunity to have a chat, but I think my 15 minutes is up. But you're a gentleman and a scholar, so thank you for making the music.
Thank you. We'll be in Australia next year. I promise you that.
Wicked.
And then we'll sit down properly and have a longer, more in-depth conversation about the world.
I'd like to do that, man. Yeah. So look, good luck with everything. This album is killer, man. I know it'll do great business for you guys. So just good luck with everything, and congratulations on an outstanding career to date.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next year.
For sure, mate. No worries. All the best.
All right, good. Cool. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
You've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online, and my name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. That interview subject was the one and only Dennis Lyxzén from the Swedish outfit Refused and a bunch of other bands. Thanks so much for listening.